Hello, are you ready to learn for today? Our topic for today will still be trigonometric ratio, but this is just a follow-up. So, meron kayong bagong matututunan ngayon. So, on these following examples, we will still apply the sixth trigonometric ratio, but this time we are given with one of the given. We are given with one of the trigonometric ratio. Yan. So, we are to identify the rest or the remaining trigonometric ratio. But this is somehow different with uh, the examples that we used to answer based on our performance task number 5 because on this given example, wala tayong given right triangle. But we can use the given trigonometric ratio to identify the rest of the trigonometric ratio. But how? Una, ganito. Ang given natin ay si sine theta is equal to 5 over 13, for example, number 1. Ayan, so kung mapapansin ninyo, if we go back to the different mnemonics that we use on the trigonometric ratios that we have, that sine theta falls under the mnemonic that is so. Ano ibig sabihin ng so? So means sine of the given angle theta or sine theta is equal to opposite over hypotenuse. That means we can say that 5 over 13 is equivalent to the ratio of opposite side over the hypotenuse side. Now, how do we relate this with our previous example? Wala ka man nakalagay na right triangle dito, pwede ka naman gumawa. You create your arbitrary right triangle. You place one of the acute angle as your theta. Ilagay mo dyan. And from there, we can already identify which will be your hypotenuse, opposite side, and adjacent side. Opposite ng right angle nung ginawa mong right triangle is gonna be your hypotenuse. Opposite ng theta mo is your opposite side. And then, the remaining side, which is beside your given theta, is gonna be your adjacent side. At paano natin na-identify yung mga values ng sides na to? Ang magbibigay sa iyo ng clue is yung given trigonometric ratio natin. Sinabi dito na ang sine theta daw is 5 over 13, which represents the opposite over hypotenuse. Ibig sabihin lang yan, ang value ng opposite side natin ay 5 at ang value ng hypotenuse natin ay 13. Ilagay natin ngayon to sa ginawa nating right triangle. So, opposite side 5, hypotenuse is 13. Ngayon, ang kailangan na lang natin gawin is kompletuhin lahat ng values ng sides ng right triangle na to para ma-identify yung iba pang trigonometric ratios na natitira. Ang kailangan na lang naman natin dyan i-identify is yung value ng adjacent side. But how do we identify that side? We can use the Pythagorean theorem. We can set the two legs as A and B, katulad ng ginagawa natin before, and then we set our hypotenuse as C. And then after that, we substitute it to a square from a squared plus b squared is equal to c squared, wherein since a is equal to 5, we substitute 5 from there, and then c is equal to 13, kaya siya magiging 13 squared. And then simplify lang natin to solve for the value of b or the adjacent side. So 5 squared is 25, ito siya. 13 squared is 13 times 13, which is 169. Lipat natin yung 25 sa kabila. And we'll get 169 minus 25 on the right side of the equation. Now, if we subtract that two numbers, we'll get 144. But that is not yet the value of b because we have to square root both sides so that we can identify the value of b, which is equal to positive 12. In this case, kompleto na tayo sa mga sides ng right triangle natin. Adjacent side is equal to 12, opposite side is equal to 5, and our hypotenuse is equal to 13. Now, we will go back to our lesson before. We can now identify the remaining trigonometric ratios that we have. Babalikan natin yung mnemonics natin, yung mga patterns na sinusundan natin sa mga ratio. For cosine theta, we'll follow the mnemonic ka. Ka. Yung may h sa dulo, ah. So, ka means the cosine theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. A over h. Since ang value ng ating adjacent side is 12 and our hypotenuse is 13, therefore, cosine theta is equal to 12 over 13. How about tangent theta? So for tangent theta, we have TOA, di ba? Ayan, no? TOA, tangent theta, is equal to the ratio of opposite over adjacent. 5 over 12, tignan natin. TOA means opposite side over adjacent side. Since our opposite side is 5 and our adjacent side is 12, that's gonna be 5 over 12. Anyway, let's proceed to cosecant theta. Ito, di ba ginagawa natin dito? Inverse na lang, eh, no?
5 of 13 over 5 po.
Very good. Since cosecant theta is just the inverse of sine at given tayo dito ng sine, kuhain mo lang inverse ng or reciprocal ng 5 over 13 which is 13 over 5. Let's proceed with secant theta.
13 over 12 po.
13 over 12. Ang secant theta naman ay inverse ng cosine theta natin. So if cosine theta is 12 over 13, secant theta is 13 over 12. And lastly, we have cotangent theta.
12 over 5 po.
12 over 5. Ang obvious dyan, si cotangent kasi siya yung inverse ng ating tangent. Kung ang tangent natin ay 5 over 12, cotangent is 12 over 5. Okay, let's proceed with number 2 or our second example. Given each ratio, let's identify the other trigonometric ratio. So dito sa number 2, ang given natin ay cotangent theta is equal to 9 over 12. So punta tayo dito sa mnemonics natin. Cotangent kasi yung given natin. So, anong pwede natin gamitin dito? Si so, si ka, si towa, si cho, si sya, o si kaw. So, katowa o cho, sya, kaw. Sino dyan sa anim na yan? Kasi cotangent yung given natin eh. Si ka ba? Pag si ka, cosine dapat yun. Cotangent yung given eh. O, hanapin nyo dyan yung may cotangent. And remember ito cotangent yung given natin eh, oh. Cotangent 9 over 12. So, dapat, yung hanapan natin dito na mnemonic is may cotangent. So, cotangent, ang gagamitin natin dyang ratio is yung adjacent over opposite. So, cow yung gagamitin natin. So, cow means the cotangent theta is equal to adjacent over opposite, which means the value of the adjacent side is 9 and the value of the opposite side is the opposite side is 12. Now, once again, pwede kang gumawa ng format. Ayan, same right triangle. Doon mo pa rin ilagay yung theta mo. That means, andyan pa rin yung hypotenuse, opposite side, and adjacent side. This is all the same right triangle that we have on example number 1. But the only difference that we'll be doing here is the values of the sides. Because right now, the value of our adjacent side is 9 and our opposite side is 12. Yan. So we put our opposite side here, 12, and our adjacent side here as 9. And then after that, we'll use those values to identify the value of the hypotenuse using Pythagorean theorem. So just like what we have on our first example, we set our opposite side as A, adjacent side as B, and our hypotenuse as C. And then we'll substitute it from A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. Since the value of our A is 12, lagay natin dyan 12. Ang value ng b natin, ito, 9. So, let's substitute. It will now become 9 squared. And since we're looking for the hypotenuse, c will be missing here. So, we'll have it as c squared na lang. So, 12 squared is equal to 144, while 9 squared is equal to 9 times 9, which is equal to 81. So, pag in-add natin yan, 144 plus 81, that's gonna be equal to 225. And if you're already familiar with 225 and the square root of it, you know the value of c already. Yan. Sa mga examples natin, palaging may ganyan, no? Square root of 225, that's gonna be equal to 15. Therefore, our hypotenuse is equal to 15. Once you're already done completing the values of the sides of the right triangle, specifically the opposite side, the hypotenuse side, and the adjacent side, pwede ka nang or pwede mo nang kumpletuhin yung mga natitirang trigonometric ratio. So, let's start once again with sine theta kasi yan yung nakalagay dito. We'll follow the mnemonic so for this one.
12 over 15 po.
12 over 15. So, that's gonna be opposite over hypotenuse. But these are those examples wherein you can still simplify our ratio.
4 over 5 po.
Very good. If you divide both of the numerator and denominator to its greatest common factor, which is 3, we can get the value of the lowest term of 12 over 15, which is 4 over 5. Let's proceed with cosine theta. So when you answer, i-lowest term na. O, cosine theta naman tayo. Let's have ka, adjacent over hypotenuse.
3 over 5 po.
3 over 5. Supposedly, it's 9 over 15 because your adjacent is 9 and your hypotenuse is 15. But the lowest term of 9 over 15 is 3 over 5. Tama. Next, tangent theta naman tayo. TOA tayo, TOA. Opposite over adjacent.
4 over 3 po.
4 over 3. Yan ang 4 over 3. Ayan, tangent, tama. Opposite over adjacent. So that's supposedly 12 over 9 or 4 over 3. That's correct. Next, let's have cosecant theta. O, ayan na talaga, nasa cosecant na.
5 over 4 po.
Ayan, very good. So, yung lowest term na yung pwede nating i-reciprocal. Since ang inverse ng ating sine theta or yung reciprocal nito is cosecant theta, we can just get the reciprocal of 4 over 5, which is 5 over 4. Next, secant theta.
5 over 3 po.
5 over 3. Si secant theta naman ay ang opposite, I mean ang reciprocal ng ating cosine theta, which is 3 over 5. So it's gonna be equivalent to 5 over 3. So kung hinahanap nyo kung nasan yung cotangent, ayun yung given. Ito nasa taas. Ayan. So let's proceed with our third example on this one. So we have here cosine theta, which is equal to 2 over 3. So if we follow the same step, we have cosine theta is equal to 2 over 3. Ayan siya. Ngayon, kung babalik tayo dito sa SOHCAHTOA, CHOSHAKAW, ano dyan yung magiging useful? Gagamitin natin si K. Kasi nga, cosine yung given. So that means if we use K, we say that cosine theta is equal to adjacent over hypotenuse. K, yung may h sa dulo, kaya siya adjacent over hypotenuse. Which means, the value of the adjacent side is 2 and the value of our hypotenuse is 3 on this given right triangle represented by the ratio of cosine theta. Now, pwede kang gumawa ng same format ng right triangle. Lagay mo dyan yung theta, nandito pa rin yung hypotenuse, opposite side, and adjacent side. And then, ang pagkakaiba na lang yan is yung values ng mga sides natin. Katulad nga nung given natin dito, ang adjacent side natin ay 2 at ang hypotenuse natin ay 3. So, adjacent side 2, hypotenuse is equal to 3. And then, the missing side here is your opposite side. So, once again, we will use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for the value of the opposite side. So, we set A as the opposite, B as the adjacent, C as the hypotenuse. A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. Since missing si A, yung opposite side natin, magiging A squared lang ito. At pagdating kay B squared, magiging 2 squared siya kasi 2 yung value ng B natin. 3 squared is 9. 2 squared is 4. So we have A squared plus 4 is equal to 9. Pag nilipat natin yung 4 sa kabila, magiging 9 minus 4. So if you're thinking that the answer is equal to 5, may kulang tayo. Yung 5 na yan, si A squared pa lang yan. So what we will do, we get the square root of both sides first bago tayo mag-final answer. Eh, hindi naman perfect square si 5 eh. Anong square root ni 5? O, di pwede natin siyang i-retain sa loob ng radical sign since it's not a perfect square. So the value of A or the opposite side here is a square root of 5. We can now identify the following. Let's start with sine. So, what's so? Opposite over hypotenuse. Sige.
Square root of 5. Square root of 5 over 2.
Ang opposite side natin is square root of 5. Ang hypotenuse natin ay 3. So, opposite over hypotenuse. Let's proceed to tangent. Hindi na tayo magko-cosine na. Given na yung cosine dito eh. So, diretso tayo sa tangent. TOA. Opposite over adjacent.
Square root of 5 over 2.
Square root of 5 over 2. Very good. It's opposite over adjacent side. Square root of 5 over 2. Tama. Let's proceed to cosecant theta. Ang inverse ni sine theta.
3 square root of 5 over 5.
3 square root of 5 over 5. Tignan natin. Kasi inverse yan ni sine eh. So, magiging 3 over square root of 5 siya dapat. But tama yung way ng pag-rationalize mo. It's supposed to be equal to 3 square root of 5 over 5. Ang technique natin dyan, shortcut dyan, pag-multiply mo na itong nasa numerator at denominator, kaya siya magiging 3 square root of 5 over 5. And then, tanggalin mo lang yung radical sa denominator. O, di ba? Naka-rationalize na siya. 3 square root of 5 over 5. That's correct. Let's proceed to secant theta.
3 over 2.
Okay, very good. That's correct. Kala ko may mali dito eh. Kasi di ba usually kasunod ng sine theta, cosine. Eh, ang kasunod dito, tangent na eh. So, dapat tignan nyo, nasa taas si cosine. Inverse niya is 3 over 2. Let's proceed to cotangent theta.
2 square root of 5 over 5.
O, diba? Ang galing.
Very good. 2 square root of 5 over 5. That's the simplified form of 2 over square root of 5. Let's proceed with example number 4 and 5. Katulad nung binanggit ko sa inyo, padali to ng padali. Anong ibig sabihin ng padali? Paigsi ng paigsi. Number 4, tignan nyo. If cosecant theta is equal to 2, find sin theta. Kanina, 5 yung hahanapin mo na trigonometric ratio. Dito, isa na lang. O di mas masaya. Ano pang masaya dito sa number 4? If you notice and compare the trigonometric ratios that we have, you will notice that cosecant theta is here and it's actually the inverse of sine theta, which is the one that we are looking for. So kung ang cosecant theta mo is 2 at ginawa natin tong fraction para mas mukha talaga siyang ratio, 'di ba? 2 is equivalent to 2 over 1. And that cosecant theta is equal to 2 over 1, which means this is hypotenuse over opposite, di ba? That's cosecant theta. And since inverse lang naman ito yung sine, anong value ng sine theta natin?
1 over 2 po.
1 over 2. Very good. That's correct. Or 1 half. Kasi nga, di ba, inverse lang nila. You get the reciprocal of the given ratio. Ganun din sa number 5. So, as you notice here, we have the given cosine theta. Ito yon, si K, which is equivalent to adjacent over hypotenuse. And we are looking for the value of secant theta. Ito yun, oh, hypotenuse over opposite. So if cosine theta is square root of 3 over 2, this represents adjacent over hypotenuse. And if we are to identify secant theta, which is just the inverse of cosine theta, or the reciprocal, we can just make that adjacent over hypotenuse to hypotenuse over adjacent. Which means, anong magiging sagot natin kay secant theta? 2 square root of 3 over 3. 2 over square root of 3, supposedly. But we still have to rationalize it, kaya nga ang sagot is 2 square root of 3 over 3. But there will be a problem if, yes, isa lang naman yung hinahanap, pero paano kung katulad nitong number 6? You're given with cosecant theta, which is equal to 17 over 8, and we are to find cosine theta. The problem here is that hindi naman kasi inverse ni cosecant si cosine eh. Ang inverse ni cosecant theta is sine theta. So if you're thinking the answer is 8 over 17, that's the value of sine theta, not cosine theta. Hindi naman mag-inverse yan si cosecant tsaka si cosine eh. Ang mag-inverse si cosecant tsaka si sine. So, ayan yung tama. Eh, hindi naman hinahanap si sine theta. So, hindi natin pwede gamitin yung ginagawa natin kanina. But, what we can do is to compare the ratios that they have. We know that cosecant falls under CHO, which means hypotenuse over opposite. So, ibig sabihin ng value ng hypotenuse dito sa right triangle na nire-represent ng ratio na to ay 17 at yung opposite side ay 8. Pero kung ikukumpara natin to sa ratio na meron ng cosine, it falls under K, which means adjacent over opposite. Yes, pwede nating magamit yung 17 na hypotenuse value dito. 17. But the problem is wala tayong value ni adjacent. Paano natin kukuhain yung value ng adjacent side? Para mas maintindihan natin, I think pwede natin kasi siya ilagay sa right triangle. Pwede kasi natin i-apply dyan yung right triangle natin na kung saan ginagamit natin kanina na nandun yung hypotenuse, opposite side at adjacent side. So as you can see here, hypotenuse is 17 and your opposite side is 8. So we are just looking for the value of the adjacent side. So gagamit tayo ng Pythagorean theorem. Ang tanong na lang, anong value ng adjacent? So gawin
15 po.
natin A adjacent as B, hypotenuse as C. So let's substitute A squared plus B squared is equal to C squared. Ang A natin ay 8. Ang C natin ay 17 is equal to 17 squared. So 8 times 8 is 64. 17 times 17 is 289. Lipat natin yung 64 sa kabila, kaya siya naging minus 64. The difference of those numbers will be 225. The famous 225 or the famous square root of 225, which is equal to 15. Therefore, ang adjacent side natin ay 15, which makes our answer 15 over 17. And it's gonna be cosine theta. Hindi problema kung may missing na isang side ng right triangle natin dun sa ratio. Pwede naman tayong mag-Pythagorean theorem. Ayan. So we can also use that given idea on number 7 because obviously cosine theta is not the inverse of cotangent theta. Hindi sila reciprocal ng bawat isa. Ang alam natin, cosine is ka. Ano ibig sabihin ng ka? Adjacent over hypotenuse. So ang adjacent dyan is square root of 2. Ang hypotenuse dyan ay si 2. Si cotangent naman, cow yan. Adjacent over opposite. So, pwede natin magamit yung square root of 2 as the value of the adjacent side. Pero yung opposite side, hindi kasi hypotenuse yung nasa cosine eh. So, gawa ko ulit right triangle. Yan, gamitin mo tong square root of 2 over 2. Yan, so, ilagay natin yung mga parts niyan. Ito yung ating theta. So, our adjacent side is 2. Ay, sorry, square root of 2. At ang ating hypotenuse ay 2. Yan, hypotenuse 2, square root of 2 ang adjacent side. We'll use Pythagorean theorem. Set natin ulit C, opposite side as A, adjacent side as B, our hypotenuse as C. Substitute natin. Sige, let's proceed. Yan, substitute lang natin. C is 2, kaya siya magiging 2 squared. Ito yon. And then, square root of 2 quantity squared kasi ang adjacent side natin ay yung B nga natin. So, makakancel dyan yung ating square root at saka yung 2. Square root at saka yung squared. So, matitira na lang dyan is 2. And pag in-square natin si 2 squared, magiging 4. So, a squared plus 2 is equal to 4. Lipat natin si 2 sa kabila. Magiging 4 minus 2, which is equal to 2. If we get the square root of both sides, hindi po perfect square si 2. So, therefore, a is value of the opposite side, which is equal to square root of 2. Therefore, parehas lang pala silang square root of 2. Anong final answer natin? Square root of 2 over square root of 2 will just be equal to 1. I hope you understand the lesson for today. Until next time, bye!